This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland in one of the lane, lob to Mobley, pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including Bally Sports Ohio, without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. The Cleveland Cavaliers found a way to win ugly in Memphis despite no Evan Mobley and no Jaren Jackson for the majority of the second half. The Memphis Grizzlies, they had some injuries of their own. Joining me today, it is still a full squad here at the Chase Down Podcast. My co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good, buddy. I'm all potted out. You know, we've been guest podding like crazy. You were on Dan Devine's podcast. I went on Hardwood Knocks. I went on Volume. People are hyped about the Cavaliers, my friend. We have people are interested, and when people are interested, we get calls. So just wanted to start off because oftentimes on this podcast we are kind of doing post game reactions, things like that. Going a little wider on those podcasts. Highly recommend you check them out. And great work on Mr. Devine's pod, my friend.
Thank you so much. That's honestly one of my favorite podcasts, the Divine Intervention on the Ball Don't Lie feed. Dan Favale, obviously he's been on our podcast, one of my favorite people to talk hoops with. I thought you did a tremendous job. Still haven't caught up to the volume on them. I'm sorry, I had a busy day at work. I was listening to a little bit more music than podcast, but I will get there. But we're not here to talk about what we've been doing. I'm not potted out, Carter. I got stamina. I'm guesting all over the place. I'm never shutting up. And I thought, we talked about it on the last podcast that, hey, this is, this stretch where you have a light part of your schedule where you're reintegrating both Darius Garland and Evan Mobley, both on minute restrictions. There is a real possibility that a letdown could occur. We even theorized, hey, it could be this game against Memphis. And there were certainly opportunities for both Detroit and Memphis to upset the Cavs and deal them a tough loss in either of these games. I think it's fair to say that the effort wasn't up to the Cavs standards in either of these games. Taking the opponents a little bit lightly, which on the one hand, it's human nature. On the other hand, I'm sitting here trying to enjoy a basketball game. So you selfishly, you wish that sitting in this armchair, sitting behind a podcast mic, that they were treating these games with the seriousness that they treated the Clippers games. But if we're going to start with this game tonight against Memphis, I thought that the Cavs came out in the second half and had a much better effort defensively. And ultimately, that was what helped ensure that they got the win tonight.
Yeah, they put on the clamps. I don't feel like they ever really did that against Detroit. I feel like they just kind of got more buckets down the stretch. In this one, they held Memphis to 43 points in the second half, and kudos to that Memphis team, man. Taylor Jenkins must be a heck of a coach because they are playing. I mean, they're playing John Conchar at the 2. They're starting Scottie Pippen Jr. And they just fought and fought and fought. I think I saw they went 8-7 in the month of January or something like that, and
yeah.
They haven't been a whole lot healthier than this. Just to give a frame of reference, so. Really impressed by Memphis first and foremost, but I think they just kind of decided that they were going to meet the Grizzlies' physicality, and once they started doing that, the talent differential started to bear itself out over time. They win the second half by fast math 14 points, and it felt like it.
Yeah, 57-43 in the second half. Obviously, Jaren Jackson had a very unfortunate situation in this game where he had a double-double in the first half. League takes away a rebound and then rolls his ankle. Didn't appear to be too serious, but we're going to knock on wood here because,
him not coming back is scary. And talk about, when it rains, it pours. You're so sick that you can only eat like a sandwich on game day yesterday. And then you tough it out, you earn your team a win. You come back, you're toughing this one out, and you turn your ankle. It's like, come on, man.
It's funny. That's usually how it goes. Like when you're not feeling 100%, like that's always the day where you like stub your toe on a table, or you just manage to roll your ankle, like getting the groceries or something like that. Like that's just how it works. When you're not feeling 100%, you seem to be more susceptible to this. And it's funny because obviously, reintegrating Garland and Mobley is going to change the rotations. I think we saw some of those growing pains in both of these games as well. Especially JB seems to be prioritizing getting the starters minutes together, allowing them to get comfortable with one another, understanding that that's important for the long run. But if you're doing that, it is going to lead to some funky bench lineups. And I think we've seen some of that in both of these games. But the other thing that was very noticeable in both of these games is with Jared Allen being under the weather, it looked like he was a step slow. Jalen Duren is a hell of a player. Like Duren, Ivy, and Cade, I'm still big believers in all three of those guys. I think Detroit actually has some pieces there. But you could tell that Jarrett was a half step slow against Detroit. There were times where, just missing a layup here or there, things that he's been finishing throughout this entire stretch. Just that little bit of touch wasn't there. So I think that definitely had an impact on both of these games. And at least Jared had an excuse for looking lethargic at times. Whereas, as much as I joke around about, not taking these teams seriously, it's something that we see time and time again. Obviously, we have the Golden State loss that's going to haunt us from last season. Recently, Joel Embiid being out along with Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris against Denver, and that game goes down to the wire. The Lakers just beat Boston in Boston without LeBron and Anthony Davis. Like, there's endless examples of this happening where when you as a professional athlete, you're getting hyped up because of who's across from you. And when you basically have the Memphis hustle out there, it can be a little easy to take them a little more lightly than you would when you're in a star matchup against Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Kawhi, Paul George, and everyone else on the Clippers.
Yeah, in front of the pod, Matt Moore kind of was saying, like, hey, if you're new to the NBA, watch out, because some of the ugliest basketball happens the week before the All-Star break. Everyone's kind of ready to chill. And it's just kind of that weird kind of liminal space where you're not really like, you're just kind of surviving and getting out there. So I do think it's important to remind myself and Cavs fans that, like, yeah, January was super fun, but like if great teams beat every bad team by 40, the league would not be what we know it is. Like, it's just not how it works. And, think about how bad the Cavs were, just 4 or 5 years ago, and some of the wins they stole. So, like, getting the win does matter, especially on the road, especially on the third and four nights. It doesn't really matter who you're playing against, because how many times have we seen the Cavs lose in that spot or seen other teams lose in that spot? And that's what's really interesting about this stretch is, you are kind of the resident schedule maven of the two of us, but you looked at that really tough 7-game stretch, and I was like, man, if they go 3 and 4, that would be great. And you kind of were like, hey, look at the opposing team schedules, what they're playing against, and it looks a lot more winnable. You look at this stretch for the Cavs where you go versus Detroit, at Memphis, at San Antonio, versus Sacramento, at Washington, at Brooklyn, at Toronto. You go, oh man, we're never going to lose again. You're licking your chops. Well, you got a 3 and 4. You survive all 3 of those with 3 wins. But then next week you got 5 and 7.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where you have to really pay attention to those schedule beats, because these are humans, and like, where the Cavs benefited from it just a couple weeks ago, a week and a half ago or so, they might not benefit from it coming up against teams that, on paper it looks like they should win every single time. So I'm not going to discount these wins, especially given that, they're playing significant stretches without a single big man on the floor due to Jarrett being ill and Evan being on a minutes restriction and not suiting up tonight. And with Tristan Thompson's suspension, and you can only ask so much of Damian Jones minutes, which I thought acquitted himself pretty well, especially in the second half today. But like, I just don't think they should be in the business of apologizing for wins, even if they didn't play their best ball.
Yeah, you look at it, the Cavs are actually going to play 8 games in a row in a different city. Like, even though some of these games are at home, you're traveling between every single one of these games. You have multiple back-to-backs. As you mentioned, like, you can't take any of this for granted. And understanding that there is going to be an adjustment period, integrating Mobley and Garland, it's so much better to have it in a stretch like this where, hey, you can take a little bit of a step back. You can even, maybe not have your A+ effort in a certain game and still come away with the win, still be able to turn and flip that switch defensively and put the clamps on and get a win when it's winning time. That's really, really important, because you wouldn't want this to be integrating them at a time where, you have one of those Orlando, Boston stretches, Orlando, Milwaukee, like we've had in the past. Those are really, really important games for the standings. And the Cavs, most of those are coming after the All-Star break. There's the Philly game, which obviously we got to keep an eye on. There are reports out there about Joel Embiid. It sounds like there's still more tests and evaluations there, but there's a real opportunity ahead of the Cavs right now, who are a game out of the second seed in the Eastern Conference, tied in the loss column. You look at where they were at this point last year. When they got to their 30th win, they had 20 losses. Not the 16 that they currently have. Like, it's really, really impressive the way that they have fought through this stretch, the way that, part of the marathon of the season isn't just the parity across the league and, how good every single team is. It's also fighting against yourselves, especially on nights like tonight where it's really easy to kind of fold up and, Jarrett's out, Mobley's not playing because it's a back-to-back. I think that
Grizzlies
are
really playing super
win.
physical. Like, that's a big, feisty team, despite the talent level being where it is.
And actually, before we pivot, because I really want to get into our first impressions of Garland, because obviously he's had his first games since we last podcasted. Mobley, because we got another game of him. I do want to talk a little bit about Jaren Jackson Jr., because I'm really impressed watching him. I haven't watched a ton of Memphis games, but I feel like his self-creation has gone so much better than the last time I watched him. I've seen him attack a destabilized defense, like after the ball rotates him, attacking in space in the past. But I feel like his self-creation, his footwork, his touch around the basket and whatnot, he seems really improved, and it seems like an area of growth for him. And, if we were in the same shoes as Memphis and, continue to knock on wood that you're never that injured, because that's just awful and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But if you're in that kind of situation, that's the type of stuff that you would be looking for is, okay, our remaining core guys, what are they adding to their game? What can be brought forward? Just like we were looking at the chemistry of Mitchell and Allen when the guys are out, finding guys like Max Strus, finding these diamonds in the rough. I feel like Jaren Jackson's growth as an individual scorer is something that's really going to help them out in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, there were times where the Cavs didn't have a ton of answers for him. They had to bring over help, and he was not a kind of guy who scored on good defenders in isolation at any point in his career. And he had 25 on 23, 5 assists to 5 turnovers. It's not like he was like an insane killer in this game, but he was good enough to keep them in this thing. He really went at Jared Allen quite a bit, which is no easy task either. He was really fun. I was super impressed by this Memphis team. Like, it's funny. Again, I sound like such an excuse maker for like some less than inspiring wins, but like Detroit's also been playing a lot better. And, you see the vision for each of these teams, and how they're going to be competitive the rest of the year in these last 2 games. Cause like, I thought both teams and Detroit just, shot the cover off the ball, which never hurts. But like, I just think like I think both those teams were actually pretty good tests for the Cavs in weird ways. Like, obviously the talent level isn't there, but like they made the Cavs go beat them in both instances. And I think that's a good thing. Like,
yeah, I won't go as far because I think the Cavs also put themselves in that situation in both of these games.
Absolutely.
But you're right. And Detroit was one of those funny nights where, they go 8 of 15 on open threes and the Cavs go 4 of 13, right? Like if the Cavs shoot a new normal percentage on wide open looks, like even if you hit two more of those shots, all of a sudden that's 6 points on a 7-point win. It's 13, or you take one off of Detroit. Like those are the margins in the NBA. So for the Cavs to win a game like that, where you take more threes, but you don't hit them at the same clip, that was certainly encouraging. But let's get to Garland and Mobley. Let's get to first impressions. Where do you want to start, Carter?
I think we'll probably start with Darius, just we haven't talked about him yet. Been first off really nice to see him back. I think he was obviously much better on offense against Detroit than he was against Memphis. Really liked that he came out of the gate just launching from three. He goes 2 of 6 in just 20 minutes. Had 3 assists, 7 potential assists. I mean, I think he kind of got burned by, a couple biffed open shots that he created that were, otherwise quite good. The entire Cavaliers team was not defending in those minutes. And I saw some folks like fretting about the plus minus for him in that game against Detroit, which is like, first off, guys, just don't do that. Like, he's been the plus minus king for the Cavs the last 2 years. He's been the number one predictor to them being a positive on the floor. At least, among their high minute guys. But, he's also JB's playing. He's exploring. He played a Darius, Sam Merrill, Karis LeVert, George Niang, Evan Mobley lineup, and let me tell you what, they did not defend very well. Yeah. It was just like JB has to kind of figure out what his groupings and pairings are going to be long term. So I think he's going to have to do some playing around, especially if he's going to. It seems like he wants to keep Sam in the rotation, which means once the team is fully healthy, and God, I hope Jarrett does not actually miss time and he's fine and it just was a bad ankle and he was already not feeling well, so they just pulled the plug. But it seems like he wants to run 10 deep, and running 10 deep is a freaking hard thing to do to build a rotation, to get guys long enough shifts that they feel like they're contributing, but also, spreading out the minutes to 10 guys. So, and JB's never done it, so it's not like he has a lot of practice at it. So I think this is a spot where you're going to want to give him a little time to mess around and make some mistakes, because I just think when a coach is being asked to do something outside of his comfort zone, that's hard work, and they also just have to see how lineups play. Even if you're pretty sure you don't like a lineup, how many lineups have the Cavs run that I was pretty sure I wasn't going to like that ended up being very good for them? So you have to give those things. The
Lowry at small forward comes to mind. Yep.
So you got to give them a chance to kind of figure some of this stuff out. But yeah, I thought Darius was awesome in that first game, despite the fact that he had got a couple open threes that didn't go in. Thought he had a couple more tonight. Was a little worse as a shooter tonight, but had the 7 assists. By the way, 7 assists to 3 turnovers, I don't mind at all. I saw some people online, immediately complaining about the turnovers being back, and he had 1 or 2 bad ones, but 7 to 3 is a perfectly fine ratio as far as I'm concerned, and so I thought he was
10
fine.
to 4 in the 2 games, right? He's coming back, he's getting back into shape. There's a couple times. What I liked about the Detroit game was I felt Darius, Mobley, no matter who was on the court, I don't feel like the ball ever stuck in someone's hands for too long. I felt the movement was really, really good offensively in that game.
It seemed like that was their focus in that game. Sorry to cut you off. It feels like they were okay, we're going to, you could tell that was almost their mentality. They were devoting 90% of their mental energy to working together on offense.
Yeah, and I really like the sets. I really like the movement. I just thought that they flowed very well offensively, particularly with that starting group. Missed open shots, but you know what? If you're generating open shots, I'm always going to be a process over results guy, especially when you're talking about someone that hasn't played in 6 weeks getting his legs back. I will definitely take process over results. And when you talk about area focus, I felt like with Memphis, I'm actually surprised the Cavs got up 35 threes, because I felt like Memphis was running them off the line. I don't feel like Darius was passing up a lot of threes. I don't feel like the Cavs as a team were passing up a lot of threes. I thought Memphis, their scouting report was, hey, this is a team that's been shooting the cover off the ball. They like to get those attempts up. No Mobley on the inside. Let's force them off the line. Let's try to force them into mid-range or to Jaren Jackson Jr., who's one of the best defenders in the league.
Good
and
scheme.
He's going to clean up everything. Yeah, right. Like that is the right philosophy, because they are at a talent deficit, so they can't be out there losing the math problem. We have to cause chaos. We have to run them off the three-point line. So I thought that was Memphis's defensive philosophy. So I felt good with the Cavs shot profile in this game. But yeah, Darius, I got some of the turnovers because he had one where in the first quarter, I believe, where he picked up the ball too soon and tried to throw it over a long defender. And basically it was kind of one of those mental things where I think the turnover was actually allowing himself to be trapped. Because he had turnover issues earlier in the year, I think people are going to hyper focus on that. I don't think that hasn't been who he's been as a player, and he had already kind of cleaned that up prior to him having the jaw injury. So it's not something I'm super concerned about. But yeah, I thought I've liked what I've seen overall from him. I like that he's still being active defensively. A few times where he'll get caught on a screen or whatnot, but for the most part, he seems to be anticipating and navigating them relatively well. But I feel like one of the reasons both Detroit and Memphis stayed in these games were those bench lineups. Were the lineups in particular with DG, Merrill, LeVert, Niang, and either Dean Wade or Damian Jones at center. You're just asking a lot when you don't have one of those big men on the court. And I think this is going to be a temporary headache, because I think when Mobley and Garland are off of their minute restriction, you're going to have one of the guards and you're going to have one of the centers on the court at all times. And when you have that backline defender, it makes those lineups work a whole lot more. But the in-between, the shooting guard through power forward, that's very much going to be a work in process. It's going to be interesting to see who JB plays around with, who develops the best chemistry. It's going to take some time to figure that out, because who the playmakers are going to be. Donovan Mitchell continues to do a great job. Darius Garland's going to do a great job, as he always has. You know that you've got Jared Allen back there. You got Evan Mobley. Both of those guys provide elite support, the kind of elite support we get from Zoom. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects.
Yeah, I definitely think there is just a little bit of that figuring out to be done, in the end. Like, I'm interested to see kind of how, whether JB looks to put a guy like Ice more with Darius, just to be like, hey, like, if we're going to be a little smaller, if we're going to play him and like Merrill together, then we're at least going to be throwing our best guy at their best guy and not letting them get like advantages right off the rip. One thing I will say, though, that I want to give the team credit for is at the beginning of the fourth quarter, they're playing no center, and they even go down. I think they downshifted even further, and neither Dean or Niang was on the floor. It was 4 perimeter players at one point. At least I'm pretty sure. Well, I'm sorry. No, Dean was playing 5, but then they were.
Yeah, Dean was there.
But they had like Okoro at the 4, like Strus was at the 3. They were small, and I just thought they just decided to lean into the fact like, hey, we're small, so we have to be rugged as hell. Like I thought they guarded their tails off. Dean, taking on the challenge of guarding Jaren Jackson and really locking him down in that fourth quarter. I really like the idea that. I feel like sometimes when the team gets small, they just get switchy and like in a way that's like not passive, but certainly not like particularly assertive. I thought they got into Memphis's chest and were like, hey, we're going to get underneath you. And if you try to kill us off the dribble, we're going to cut you off. And I really, really appreciated how gritty they closed that game out.
Yeah, not to speak for you, but I'm pretty sure we're on the same page. Neither of us are really fan of soft switching, right?
No, never.
Like in general as a concept.
Never.
Yeah, like And the Cavs do a good job, particularly off ball, of not switching when they don't need to. On ball, and especially when you get the bigs on there and it's a wing, you'll selectively have like Mobley or Allen go out on those guys. But I like the way that they competed, and I thought it was really important. Like when you're playing your third game in 4 nights, to have Garland, Merrill, LeVert, Niang, Wade out there, as you mentioned, Okoro and Strus also really competing. Okoro was massive in that third quarter.
Yes, he was.
Before I get back to my thought, because I'm all over the place, when he got that charge on Jaren Jackson Jr. to give him 4 and then hit the 3 on the other end to give the Cavs the lead, that was so important because the Jaren minutes really were when Memphis was the most productive. So Okoro, I thought he really brought a lot of effort, and they helped turn the tide in that third quarter and really set the tone for the defense that the Cavs played in the second half that got them back in the game. So big shout out to him. But for that lineup in the fourth quarter to, come into the game with a 1-point lead, DG gets going, hits a 3, hits a layup. They're competing on defense. Memphis makes a little bit of a run, but the Cavs answer and go out and end up giving the Cavs a 5-point lead with 5 minutes left. Giving Donovan and those other starters that much time to rest and close out the game is incredibly important because, DG, even though he's on a minute restriction, he didn't play that third game 3 nights ago, right? Like these are guys that are deeper in the rotation that aren't playing as heavy minutes. And I thought it was really, really important, particularly in a game where you don't have Evan and you don't have Jarrett. I thought they did a tremendous job keeping the Cavs in that game and then extending the lead.
Yeah, and you mentioned the minutes. This is one of the benefits of running 10 deep and actually giving minutes to all 10 guys. Damian Jones was 10th on the team in minutes at 15. Donovan led the team in minutes at 33. You look at the starters, it's obviously Jarrett getting hurt and Darius being on a minutes restriction kind of colors the numbers, but Dean played 28, Jarrett played 21, Darius played 24, Donovan only played 33, Max played 29, Niang 22, Okoro 21, Damian 15, Karras 29, Sam 18. That is not the normal minute spread for a game that was contested pretty much start to finish. Like JB did kind of have to go deeper into the bag to find guys, whether it was due to injury, minutes restrictions, etc. But kind of everyone played their part, which I thought was really cool.
I also just saw something visualized perfectly. I just retweeted it. The Real Cavs fan account posted this, where it's the Cavs shot profile in the first half versus the second half. First half, you see a fair number of, mid-range jumpers or a little deeper floater. Second half, it is pure Morey ball. They were getting to the rim and they were taking threes. And it felt that way, but you can tell that the point of emphasis at halftime was we are locking the hell in defensively. We are getting to the rim and we are going to generate 3-point attempts as a result of that. And it actually reminds me of one of the things I really liked about Darius tonight. And even in the Detroit game as well, I feel like he's been spraying it out to the 3-point line a whole lot more. Like I feel like a lot of the Cavs 3-pointers that were made, or a lot of his assists tonight, were on 3-pointers. I'll need to look up the data tomorrow and check those assists. But I don't believe he even really had a lot of those dump off passes to the big men or to the dunker spot or cutters down below.
What big men?
Fair. But the Detroit game's part of the sample too. But I feel like he's been keeping his head out and spraying it out to the 3-point line. I remember looking at the tracking data and whatnot last year. That was something that he did a fair bit of, and it didn't feel like he was doing as much this year. So if the Cavs are going to have this movement offense, when you're going to have those weak side actions and the type of movement that has made them so successful in this stretch, having your most cerebral playmaker out there, keeping his head up and finding those guys, that's going to be really important if you're talking about elevating this offense to yet another level.
Yeah, I think that's 100% fair. And I thought he did a nice job of that too. It was kind of fun because obviously his minutes with Merrill into the Detroit game were kind of a bloodbath, so those were not crazy fun. But in this one, it was fun because you really got to see him start hunting for Sam for the first time. And we just haven't really got to see those two play together all year because Sam's ascension has happened while Darius has been out of the lineup. So I thought he did a nice job finding. I actually really like that pairing together. Well, I would like to pose this to you. Who do you like Sam playing with more, Darius or Donovan? Because I see cases for both.
I think I like it more with Donovan.
I think I agree.
So my thinking, like if you're talking about kind of perfect 5-man lineups, I like Donovan out there with Sam, LeVert, as well as Allen, because LeVert and Allen have such great chemistry as a pick and roll duo, and I think you want that extra little bit of playmaking juice with Donovan, because obviously that's a point guardless lineup. And I feel like Sam slots in so well there. They have such good chemistry with one another. Max Strus, his shooting numbers have been so much better with Darius. And I feel like when you have Darius, when you have Mobley, like I feel like you can slot Isaac in there pretty well and have Isaac be that shooting guard that's, screening for Garland or cutting off of Mobley being the high post hub. I just feel like that balances those lineups so much more. And then it just becomes the decision of who you put Dean and Niang with. But I feel like there's enough offense-defense balance in both of those lineups. So I really do like that both Merrill and Strus are strong screeners for movement shooters. Like those are guys that will actually, put their body into people and pop out, and you can run a lot of those same actions and have lineup continuity. But I think I like Merrill just a little bit more with Donovan.
I think Merrill helps Donovan lean into his better instincts. If maybe
elaborate on that.
Like I feel like when Donovan is playing with like a not crazy space court, when he's playing with guys who are more standstill shooters, like he can lean into more ISO ball. I feel like he seems to take special joy in playing with Sam, in running those guard actions, in finding him in semi transition. It was a Freudian slip. Wasn't even.
Oh my god!
Wasn't even making a joke. But yeah, I mean, I think I think for that reason, I really like Sam with Donovan, because I just think Donovan's play in a lot of ways, I think he's been playing his best basketball since one of the stats I pulled for one of my pod appearances yesterday was that since December 15th, the Cavs are second in the league in passes per game. And you just would have never expected that from a team with first unit point guard led by Donovan Mitchell and second unit point guard led by Karis LeVert. Like, you might have found their way to a good offense. You wouldn't have expected a passes per game leader. And actually, I think they were first in passes per game, second in potential assists. So, I think Sam has really helped unlock that part of Donovan's game. Not to say that it's not all the credit goes to Donovan for making those plays and making those reads, but I think Sam is functionally kind of an offense unto himself. And since Donovan is not a pure point guard, like, Sam's movement just kind of gets things ungunked. And I really like putting him with Donovan for that reason.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it is going to be interesting to see how JB experiments with these lineups. I do like going 10 deep, but, I think that the smartest thing that you forced me to do, and I know you've encouraged the listeners to do it, is like take 48 minutes at each position and try to figure out, okay, how are we going to allocate these minutes to 10 players? Who's going to get shortchanged here? And I mean, the real answer is going to be, certain guys are going to be competing on a night-to-night basis in terms of what lineups are working, who's playing best.
Yeah, Sam played 7 against the Clippers and about 20 tonight.
Yeah, and I believe he got around that against Detroit as well. Like, a lot of matchups, I think Sam's going to be someone that you can play in. I liked his effort. I thought, when you talk about the Cavs in the fourth quarter muddying the game up, I thought he was hitting the floor a lot. I thought he was being very active defensively and was a big part of that. So I like what he brings to the table. It's just going to be, it's going to be figuring out the timing. I forget who the coach interview was with Serena in the Detroit game, but one of the things he mentioned was, hey, guys are going to have to get used to playing with Darius because he sees the game and he plays at a quicker pace than anybody else, which, you know, of all the things that haven't gone as good for Darius this year, that has been one thing I've enjoyed, is he's actually played at a pace quicker than they even played when he was out. But he does see the game so quickly, and it's going to take time. It's going to take guys time to get used to playing with one another, because what worked so well in that stretch was, for the first time this season, the Cavs actually had continuity. They had a lineup that played together for an extended period of time. They got to practice with one another. They got comfortable with one another. And we just haven't had extended stretches of continuity. And when you have continuity, that's when you get your best basketball. Like, I do like the passing metric, but passes per game or assists per game as a team isn't always indicative of the best possible offense. I think it's a good sign, and it's something that I like to see. But I believe the Spurs are the league leader, and they're far from beautiful.
Yeah, I'm not
offense.
saying I'm not really doing any correlating of quality. I'm just saying it's a different profile than you would expect.
Yeah, I'm just saying that it's something that I enjoy, but it's not something that I'm going to monitor as closely as like the Cavs 3-point attempt rate as they get healthy, because, you know, even thinking back to the LeBron Kyrie Cavs, like, they ran their actions to generate isolation opportunities, to generate advantages with the defense and whatnot. And there wasn't always assist opportunities generated from that, but there was still beautiful offense being run. So I think you can have a nice mix of that. We haven't talked a whole lot about Evan. I actually really liked this game against Detroit. I thought there was more signs of him, you know, continuing to get a little bit more comfortable. The touch still isn't 100% there, but it's just so nice to see him out there on the court. And I could not be more excited. You know, this was a schedule rest game. They don't want him playing back-to-back because, you know, Darius, it's about getting in shape. Mobley, it's coming back from the knee operation. I'm very excited that we actually get to see Evan Mobley against Wembanyama. I cannot wait.
I didn't even consider that.
Yeah,
that's
going
to be awesome.
The kaijus. Let's see what's going on, man. I'm amped for that.
Yeah, I think Evans looked good. You know, I led with Darius because I do think his games have just been louder and more interesting. You know, plus, like, obviously he didn't play tonight. I thought Evan was really good in both games. And man, it's just, I'm eager to see these guys off those minutes restrictions, because, like, JB mentioned it tonight about Darius, that, you know, Darius is so used to having, like, big chunks of time to figure out how he wants to attack a game. And, you know, when you're on a 24 minute restriction, you're playing, you know, shifts of 4 to 5 to 6 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely hard for a rhythm player. And, you know, I kind of feel the same way about Evan. You know, like, something I talked about, you know, because every time we talk to anyone outside of the Cavs sphere, it's the first question is going to be, why did they play so well? What went so right for them when everyone had written them off for dead? And kind of the answer I keep giving is, they had very simplified structure. Everyone knew their job in that starting lineup. They had that continuity. You know, Dean Wade knew that if he was open in the corner, he had to take the freaking shot or he was in trouble, because, you know, they needed him to take that shot. You know, like, Jarrett couldn't just didn't have to think about whether he needed to find Evan in the dunker spot. He knew he just needed to attack in the short roll and be decisive. And, like, by adding this talent back in, they are a little bit, I do think, a little bit cursed by options again. Like, they have more decisions to make, and they have more time to decide whether perfect can be the enemy of good offensively. And, like, that's what I really want to see them get a little more time. And I feel like the minutes restrictions kind of do that a disservice, you know? Obviously, you need to do it because you need to make sure these guys are not going to get re-injured. But, like, it does make it very hard to evaluate how the offense and defense are going to look long term, because these guys are just not getting the windows that they're going to get to, like, settle into games and to settle into, like, how they're going to play.
Yeah, Basketball, I think, is probably one of the toughest sports to come back from injury, especially when you miss an extended period of time, because it's such a rhythm game, right? Like there aren't a lot of stop starts. It's not like football where, okay, you're a receiver that's missed some time. You get in shape, you run your routes, and you're still figuring out timing, but it's easier, right?
It's just your timing you got to figure out. You don't got to figure out anyone else's.
Right. And everybody plays off of one another. Like basketball, it's an ecosystem. It's jazz, right? Like it's so hard to come back from. And I didn't make this point effectively in the last podcast, I don't feel, but like watching, Mobley and Garland come back from these extended periods of time, being on minutes restriction, trying to, figure things out. It just gives me more kind of empathy for what Okoro went through, missing a month. And then coming back and, my first time playing in a very long time, and, playing through an injury is in the most pressure-filled moments of our career, while everybody else is as stressed as possible. We're all, struggling individually. It's not a good time. Like I just have so much more understanding for kind of what went on in that next series. And you know what? To his credit, like he played well in the minutes he had, but it was just so hard because it's sink or swim time when you get to the playoffs, and it's just so much better to be in this situation.
This is the right time to get healthy, going up against a soft comparative schedule, heading into the All-Star break where you're going to get another week off.
Yeah, and you know what? Even in this game, like I think you get an example of that with Damian Jones, who I thought like his first shift was not good. It was rough, but when he came out there in the third quarter, I thought he gave them really good minutes. And, it's about getting
Did he have all three of his blocks in the third quarter? I think he might have.
I believe so. God, it might have been on the same possession. But like he was out there like actually making an impact. And, I think it does give me another level of appreciation, and I think credit needs to go to guys like Dean Wade and Sam Merrill, who have had extended stretches where they weren't in the rotation and they just come in ready and they find ways to make instant impact. And some of that might be what their responsibilities are relative to guys that are like central to Cavs offense and defense and whatnot. But I think anytime you see a pro, whether it's on the Cavs or another team that comes in and does that, a lot of credit needs to go to them. So big shout out to all the guys that stepped up in this game. Thank goodness the Cavs got a win. It's fun to continue doing these standings watches. Looks like there's a real opportunity here for the Cavs to get as high as 2. I think avoiding the 4-5 needs to be the goal. Just like last year, we slid our expectations from, hey, let's avoid the play-in to let's go get home court. I think avoiding the 4-5 matchup should be the goal for the remainder of this season.
Yeah, I mean, whoever is in that 4-5 is going to be absolutely miserable that they're there, because it's going to be one of Milwaukee, New York, Cleveland, or Philly, and maybe Indy if they get really, really hot. Though I'm dubious. And any of those teams, Milwaukee, New York, Cleveland, Philly, like none of those teams should expect to lose in the first round.
No.
And someone's and it's gonna be brutal. And I don't even want to have to talk about it. I'd be thrilled to get to the second, be in the 2-3, have a much easier first round matchup, and then, if you take care of business, having that harder matchup in the second round. But the top of the East is just bananas, man. The Knicks are winners of 9 straight. They have a few marquee wins to their name now, and they didn't have OG or Grimes or Randall tonight, and they still beat Indy. So it's kind of fun. I kind of love it that they're winning, because I feel like especially with Philly's lost 4 in a row. They're up on Utah right now, but like if Embiid is going to miss some time, maybe the Cavs can kick their feet up a little bit more, but like they can't. They have to just keep winning. And as a fan of the Cleveland Cavaliers, I really like it when they win.
I'm a big fan of winning as well. If Embiid misses some time, that helps out on the one hand, but on the other hand, it could turn Philly into Miami, where they fall down in the standings as a result of injuries, and all of a sudden, hey, that's your first round matchup. The East is terrified. And I think that's why you have to really focus on your own development. Continuing to be the best version of yourselves, because I think the Cavs can give anybody a series. I feel very good about what the ceiling of this team can be, and it'll be interesting to see how long does this adjustment period have? I think it's very, very helpful that even if they go through some bumps, like you talk about, like that Sacramento, Toronto, Brooklyn, whatever that trip is there, those 3 games, you could very easily be 1-2 there. That would not surprise me in the least if that stretch goes a little sideways for the Cavs, but they're going to have that reset of the All-Star break. And then I think the hope would be that you're hitting the ground running, you're full steam ahead from that point on, and then we can see where this goes. Obviously, if Embiid's missing time, that can open up opportunity for All-Star replacement for Jared Allen. I think he'd be very deserving. We buried the lead there. Donovan Mitchell, congratulations for being a 5-time All-Star. I think
it was such a foregone conclusion. We didn't need to lead with it.
We didn't need to lead with it, but I think he's been absolutely out of this world. I think he deserves to be an MVP conversation. He's, a 5-time All-Star, but I think he should be a first-team All-NBA this year for sure. He's just been out of this world good. So we will continue to update that situation. And I guess the next podcast is going to be after the Kings game on Monday. That should be a fun one.
Hell yeah, brother. The Kings have bothered us in years past. That is not... they're not quite as good as they were last year. They're 8 games over 500, but they're only plus 0.7 on the point differential. So they are pretty wildly outperforming their win differential or their point differential. But I think it's a tough matchup, man. They scare me, and I'm excited. I'm excited. That's one of those measuring stick games to me.
Yeah, it is a measuring stick game. They will be on as the schedule man, they will be on a long road trip, 3 and 4, all that good stuff. But that is one of the toughest matchups that I think exists for the Cavs. You really got to hope that Jared Allen's healthy for that one, because Sabonis is a handful even with Jared Allen. So we'll be going live after that game. Big thanks to everyone that tuned in live today. Make sure you like and subscribe, click notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chasedown's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.